Hi, this is Chris Young, and welcome to episode 37 of Contemplating Life. Back in episodes 6, 7, and 11 through 15, I told the story of my faith journey as I grew up Catholic, left the church in my late teens, and returned in my late 20s. For over 30 years after that return, I remained extremely active in my local parish. The only reason I'm no longer active is I simply lack the stamina to get out of the house on a regular basis and contribute my time and talent to the church. My dedication to the church hasn't wavered much over the years. I included that word much because there have been some challenging times. There were times when the work became emotionally overwhelming. I occasionally disagreed with the clergy and other volunteers about the course we should take in our ministry. There are times when I felt as though the work I did was not appreciated or understood. So I thought that would be a good idea to go over some of those stories in the coming episodes. As always, whenever I discuss religion or my faith journey, I always want to provide a disclaimer. I'm not trying to evangelize, proselytize, or convert anyone to my way of thinking or believing. I'm simply telling the stories and my experiences, and I hope that you'll find them, well, as my closing remarks always say, I hope you find them educational, entertaining, enlightening, or even inspiring. Now, much of my early ministry in the church revolved around my expertise as a computer programmer and systems analyst. That's what we're going to talk about today. I hope my church and other churches computerize their operations. As I mentioned in that earlier series of episodes about my involvement in the Catholic Church, I began volunteering my time and talent to St. Gabriel the Archangel Catholic Church even before I decided to return to the church. In 1978, I had a personal computer that my dad and I built from kit parts. Now, I have to laugh these days when I hear someone say, I built a PC. What they mean is they purchased a motherboard, a CPU, graphics card, power supply, and a case. When I say that I built a computer in the late 1970s, we purchased circuit boards and a bag of loose parts in a kit form. We had to solder it all together. We would solder in sockets to plug the chips, as well as discrete components like resistors, capacitors, and voltage regulators. Anyway, that's off topic. Make a note to myself, do a series of episodes about all the computers I've owned over the years. So anyway, at church there was a woman named Diane something, I forget her name, who was the parish bookkeeper. She would come over to my house once a month and enter the monthly financial report into a spreadsheet that I designed for her. I think we might have been using Boyle and Quattro spreadsheet, but I'm not sure. The name of that software was a joke because the leading spreadsheet at the time was a product called Lotus 123. The word quattro is Italian for four. The joke was, it's one better than 123. My mom heard about a program called Parish Data System, or PDS for short. It was written by a Catholic programmer in Arizona in conjunction with his parish priest. It was a database program for keeping track of members. Each family had a family number, and members within the family had member numbers. And there were screens full of information at both of those levels, included address, phone number, and so on. It also had the ability to track financial contributions. You could establish your own list of keywords to assign to families or individuals. Family keywords would include things like school family, inactive, or out of parish, the latter being for people who attended our church but didn't live within the boundaries. Outside visitors, so to speak. Member keywords were usually used for the type of activities a person was involved in, such as parish council, board of education, maintenance committee, men's club, women's club, Eucharistic minister, and so on. There were a wide variety of ready-made reports built into the system. The most useful one was called FamQuick, which was a quick report of family information, included the family name, address, phone number, and so on. You could also print mailing labels based on keyword searches. So if you wanted to do a mailing to everyone in the men's club, for example, you'd simply specify that keyword, and it would spit out labels for everyone who had that keyword. It also contained some rather useful Catholic-specific features, most notably whether or not you had received certain sacraments and the date in which you had received them. So you might search for all children of a certain age who had not yet received First Communion, and send them a mailing encouraging the parents to enroll their kids in sacrament preparation classes. At one point, someone donated a personal computer to the parish. It was made by Zenith, which is a brand name mostly known for TVs, stereos, and other appliances rather than computers. It was probably made by someone else, and they just stuck the name Zenith on it. It had a Z80 processor and ran CPM operating system. It had a pair of 5¼ inch floppy drives. But that wasn't sufficient to run PDS. You really needed a computer with a higher capacity drive, preferably a hard drive, to make good use of it. I taught our parish priests how to use the WordStar word processing software, and I built spreadsheets for them using either Quattro or perhaps Microsoft Multiplan. By the way, Multiplan was the first piece of Microsoft software I ever owned. It had a feature that's still not available on Microsoft Excel or any other spreadsheet that I know of. It was sort of three-dimensional. Now, Microsoft Excel has the ability to have multiple pages or tabs within the same sheet, and you can cross-reference cells or ranges of cells between pages. But Multiplan would allow you to select a range across the pages. So suppose you had 12 sheets in the file, one for each month's expenses. You could write a formula that would give you the sum of cell, say G32, from sheet 1 through sheet 12. If there's a way to do that in Excel, I haven't figured it out, unless you want to say, give me sheet 1 G32 plus sheet 2 G32 plus sheet 3 G32, and so on. But you couldn't select a range of pages or tabs within the spreadsheet. A decent personal computer with a hard drive would cost well over $2,000 in those days, so it was a little bit out of our price range. Then we had someone make us the proverbial offer we couldn't refuse. There was a company that would publish your weekly Sunday bulletin for you. You would send them typed up, camera-ready copy by FedEx on a Monday evening. They would print your bulletin for you and FedEx it back to you by Friday afternoon to be ready to distribute for Saturday services. They made their money by selling ads on the back of the bulletin. So they offered you a deal. If you could get a certain amount of ads sold, they would give you a free computer. I seem to recall the deal also included the parish data system program as part of the free bundle. That program alone was worth several $100s. My mom told the salesman, "I've been lusting for a computer for our parish." He was happy he could satisfy her lust. The computer was called a K-Pro 10. It was the second major portable computer ever mass-produced. Now, when I say portable computer, I'm not talking about a laptop. Those were still some years off. The term portable computer in those days meant it folded up into a package about the size of a medium-sized suitcase. I believe one of them advertised it was capable of being stashed underneath an airplane seat. The first such portable computer was the Osborne 1. It was kind of difficult to use. It had a notoriously small TV screen. Adam Osborne, its inventor, sold them like hotcakes. But then he made the mistake of announcing a more advanced version with a better screen and a hard drive. Unfortunately, the machines weren't ready to ship when he announced it. So his sales dropped to zero because nobody wanted the old version. They were waiting for the new one. The K-Pro 2 and K-Pro 4 hastened the demise of Osborne computers. They both had better screens and better floppy drives. The K-Pro 10 also included a 10 megabyte hard drive. Yes, people, that's megabytes, not gigabytes. A megabyte is 1,000,000 bytes. A gigabyte is 1,000 megabytes. Your phone has multiple gigabytes of memory. You can get a flash drive with 256 gigabytes of storage. And today's hard drives can hold terabytes of storage, which is 1,000 times more than a gigabyte. But in those days, 10 megabytes was huge. Now, whenever we got a computer at our parish, Father Paul would give it a blessing that we would be able to use it for good purposes. I always warned him, don't sprinkle holy water on it. You don't want to short the thing out. Anyway, I helped him set up the PDS database software, and I put together a plan for data management. And that involved choosing the keywords that I thought would be useful, such as those I've already described. This really helped them to unlock the power of a computer database, beyond things just like printing labels and stuff. Now, the PDS report generation program also had a bit of a programming language built into it, so you could create sophisticated reports. I did some pretty clever things with it over the years, rather than just using the standard reports that came with it. One of the limitations of the program in those days was it would only keep track of monthly totals of contributions. So it had the capability of recording donations across 9 different funds. They expected you to set up one fund for your ordinary Sunday contributions and other funds for things like capital campaigns or fundraising drives, missionary work, and so on. I came up with a clever idea. We should create 5 funds, one for each Sunday of the month, because, of course, some months have 5 Sundays. That way we could keep track of weekly contributions, even though the system was only designed to keep monthly totals. And that still gave us 4 additional funds we could use for other purposes, like special collections or missionary work. I had to rewrite all the financial reports to take advantage of this crazy system I designed. Fortunately, the programming capabilities of the report generator were fairly sophisticated. We would mail a financial statement to families a few times a year to remind them if perhaps they skipped a Sunday. Father would write a topping letter suggesting that if they had missed a Sunday, you might consider making it up. We would, of course, send a complete report at the end of the calendar year that they could use for tax purposes, for charitable donations. Now, we also had a requirement that if you had kids in our parochial school and wanted the Catholic discount for your tuition, you had to be a regular contributor. But there were tax regulations that said if we required a certain level of contribution in order to qualify for a Catholic discount, you couldn't call that a charitable contribution. It was really just masking a different way to pay your tuition. So we had to drop the mandatory contribution requirements so people could still count their donations on their taxes. But we needed to find a way to make sure that you were going to have the benefit of the lower tuition rate. You had to be an active member of the church. So our school principal came up with a really clever plan that in some ways shamed people into paying. Hey, if you got to be active in the church to get a church discount, anything we could do to coerce you into doing your fair share, that was okay with me. Now, we preach the principle of tithing. That means giving 10% of your income to charity. It comes out of some Old Testament scripture readings. We define that 10% as 5% to the church and 5% to other charitable endeavors, such as United Way, American Cancer Society, missionary work, other special collections. But they also said that that other 5% could include your Catholic tuition. I wasn't so sure that was completely kosher, if you pardon my cultural appropriation. Anyway, we couldn't force people to give 5%, but we could use that 5% number as a standard. We participated in a federal school lunch program that would give subsidies for school lunches to low-income families. The principal knew what income level was required to qualify for that program. She took 5% of that and concluded if you weren't paying 5% of the poverty level income in your contribution, it must have been because you were too poor. So she would invite parents to come in and very gently and discreetly offer them the opportunity to sign up for free or reduced lunch prices. After all, if you're making more money than that poverty level, why weren't you contributing more? Of course, when you filled out the paperwork for the subsidies, you had to reveal your income, and that's when the conversation would come about not doing your fair share. So technically, we didn't have a set amount that you had to contribute, but we made it pretty clear that participation was a requirement. The school lunch thing was sort of a ruse to start that conversation. Sneaky, but I liked it. One of the clever things that we did with the program was to send out these financial statements encouraging people to meet their tithing pledge. And then we would send a customized letter depending on whether or not they were meeting their pledge, falling short of the pledge, or perhaps giving absolutely zero. These letters would go out whether the family was making use of our parochial school or not. We wanted people to keep up with their pledge. The problem was there was a limitation to what the PDS software could do. You couldn't say print letter version A to people who meet their pledge and version B to those who gave zero and do it all in the same run. You would have to select, based on the contribution level, the people who gave zero. Print out the mailing labels for that group, stuff the right letter in those envelopes, and then do a separate run for people who gave other amounts. So members of the Finance Committee would get together on a Saturday afternoon for an envelope stuffing project. I had to set things up in 4 different groups. There were school families who gave something, school families who gave zero, non-school families who gave something, and non-school families who gave zero. They each got a different letter, and we had to run them separately. Now, I would give the groups names like Group A, B, C, and D, so that the people stuffing the envelopes wouldn't necessarily know that if they were doing Group B, it was a deadbeat family with kids in school. We didn't want them looking at those people sideways when they came to church. We wanted to respect their privacy. And inevitably, the people stuffing envelopes wanted to know why we had to do all these complicated, separate groups of mailings. I tried to just say, well, it's a limitation of the program we're using. But then they got more curious, wanted to know what the categories were. I finally got fed up. I just explained to them what the categories were. Afterward, I said, I'm trying to be sensitive to people's privacy and not telling you which group is which. But if you really want to be nosy and read the letter you're stuffing and know who's deadbeat, then do so. But it's on your conscience, not mine. Computerizing our mailings allowed us to do some really great things. For example, we could create a search of the database for anyone who had children of school age who were not already enrolled in our parochial school. We would invite them to consider coming to our school, but if not, please enroll your child in Sunday morning religious education programs, which we call by the Catholic name CCD classes, as I explained in an earlier episode. That sounds like a really great idea, doesn't it? We want our kids to get a Catholic education one way or another. If not in the parish elementary school, then in Sunday school. Nothing wrong with that, is there? Unfortunately, that letter had the potential to cause someone a great deal of emotional upset. There was a man who was a very active and devoted member of our Catholic parish, but his wife was not Catholic. Now, for centuries, Catholics were forbidden or strongly discouraged from marrying someone non-Catholic. My dad wasn't Catholic. He had to sign a paper assuring the priest that any children my parents had would be raised Catholic. Now, apparently, this particular parishioner who was married to a non-Catholic either didn't have to sign that paper or he didn't care that she violated the promise. His wife and kids all attended a Protestant fundamentalist church, and they were quite disapproving that Dad was a Catholic. I can only imagine the emotional pain and marital conflict it would have caused if she opened a piece of mail suggesting she should send her kids to Catholic school or to Catholic Sunday school. This was decades ago, and I don't recall if we were able to intercept that letter before they sent it, or if it was actually delivered and caused them some problems. I really hope we caught it in time. I seem to remember maybe we didn't. In a similar case, a non-Catholic husband was unsupportive of his wife's involvement in the church, and he didn't want to see any mailings from that damn church. She spent too much time over there anyway. So we had a special family keyword that we only attached to very few families that indicated send no mail. One day while working at the church, someone asked me, why do we have a send no mail keyword? I explained, well, there's just some people who shouldn't be getting mailings. They kept pressing me, why? Again, I got frustrated, lost my patience that they wouldn't just take my word for it. So I just rather angrily explained, well, if you have to know, because we're trying to keep wives from getting beaten by their husbands because they don't like getting mail from the church. I didn't realize it, but one of the women who had the send no mail keyword overheard me. I was about to apologize when she came over, patted me on the back, said, "Hon, keep up the good work." So even though computerization gave us tremendous new capabilities, we learned very quickly we could not take the human element out of the equation. Any such customized correspondence we created, we had to make sure that we had someone knowledgeable reviewing everything that went out. Now, everything I developed on the PDS program, I did for free for my own parish. But there were at least 3 other parishes that hired me to consult with them on the best ways to use the program. And I described those efforts as doing well while doing good. Years later, Parish Data Systems was acquired by another company called ACS Technology. And now it has expanded into a much more sophisticated suite of programs that also includes general ledger, payroll, facility scheduling, and other tools at both the parish and diocesan levels. In coming weeks, I'll talk more about the years I served as a member of the parish finance committee, and eventually as its chairman. At one point, I think the committee was called Ways and Means. It seemed like we always had many more ways than we had means. We'll talk about those challenges and more in the weeks to come, as I continue the story of my volunteer work at St. Gabriel Church. If you find this podcast educational, entertaining, enlightening, or even inspiring, consider sponsoring me on Patreon for just $5 per month. You'll get early access to the podcast and any other benefits I might come up with down the road. Although I have some financial struggles, I'm really not in this for money. But every little bit helps. As always, a huge thanks to all of my financial supporters. Your support pays for the writing seminar I attend and other things, but mostly I appreciate it because it shows how much you care and you appreciate what I'm doing. Your support means more to me than I could ever express. Even if you can't provide financial support, please post links and share this podcast on social media so I can grow my audience. My numbers have been down a little bit the the past couple of weeks. I'd like to get them back up again. Again, it's not about the money. I just want to share my stories and have more and more people hear them. All of my back episodes are available. I encourage you to go back and check them out if you're new to the podcast. If you have any comments, questions, or other feedback, please feel free to comment on any of the platforms where you find the podcast. I'll see you next week as we continue contemplating life. Until then, fly safe, everyone.